Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we have one big piece of news, and that big piece of news is of course that the Model 3 Highland, or the updated new Model 3, is now available in the United States and in North America, and actually in Taiwan as well. So we'll talk about that. Tesla stock on the day today, despite this update, down 0.4% to close at $233.94 on the day. The Nasdaq, another strong day, up 0.75%, so another underperformance for Tesla. But we do have exciting news, of course, with the Model 3 Highland update. Finally here in the United States, and I say finally, but actually a little bit earlier than I think most people would have expected. We did have, of course, some rumors that maybe this was coming on January 14th. Then yesterday we did see that promotional image show up of a Highland on the demo drive page, and I guess I was wrong, and that was a little bit of a hint that maybe this was coming. And late last night we did see the official launch and release, with this being added to the design studio. So we're not going to go through every single feature. We've already done this. I think hopefully if you're listening to Tesla Daily, you've got a good handle on what the updates are here. But just as a reminder, we've got new exterior, new interior, including the ventilated seats, LED lighting, rear screen, softer touch materials, and of course improved noise, vibration, and harshness, or NVH, on the vehicle. So major updates here. Despite this, Tesla has actually kept the price the same. So if we go into the design studio, we can see here that the price is, that's with probable savings, but the price here, $38,990 for the rear-wheel drive or standard range version. The price for the long range, $45,990. So again, those prices are the same as previously. Just want to make sure everything is working here okay. There we go. Yep, same prices as previously, which may be a little bit unexpected because, of course, when Giga Shanghai updated to the Highland Model 3, we did see price increases in China and Europe for the Model 3. However, when we consider the situation for the Model 3, of course, there is no tax credit available on this, with the exception of leases. It is actually still being included in leases for the time being, lowering that starting leasing price, so very competitive there. But for purchase, the tax credit is not available on either of these versions. That was the case immediately prior to this change, once we went into 2024. Of course, the Performance still had it, but as we can see with this update, similarly to Giga Shanghai, for the moment, no Performance Model 3. So we may see that added back in the future, but right now just the rear wheel drive and the long range, and again at the same price. So although we're not seeing a price increase here like we did for Europe and China, remember this is coming fresh off of the exclusion from that full $7,500 tax credit. That is very significant. And we also, of course, on inventory vehicles for the Model 3, as we can still see here, those have been being discounted now for quite some time, even after the price cuts that we had in the early part of Q4. So although we're not seeing a list price increase, this is still effectively a price increase plus, because of the inventory situation, plus we are, of course, not having the full electric vehicle tax credit outside of leasing. So with that considered, I don't think it's too surprising. And if Tesla can clear the vehicles at these prices, I think that's still going to be a nice win for them margin-wise versus where it would have been otherwise. Also to consider, because we're seeing them sell it at the same price here, even though we've added, of course, a ton of new features here and hopefully improved the product quality, if they're able to do this at the same price in the United States, that should bode well for what the margins would be out of Giga Shanghai, right? Because if the cost structure is such that these are still sellable at this price, Giga Shanghai has the higher price and probably better cost control, of course, so we should see really healthy margins for the Model 3 out of Giga Shanghai, which would be a great sign, especially given how quick that transition happened. And that would be the same case here too with the transition. So we did hear from one of Tesla's VP of supply chain, Roshan Thomas, on X, says the team has been working super hard on this for several months. So we talked about this when we got the Q4 results, and maybe the production numbers were a little bit lower than what we could have been in terms of just mapping that out factory by factory. With that being the case, my hope was that some of this production that maybe could have existed otherwise was not there because of downtime for Highland-related transition, and maybe that would lead to us seeing it a little bit sooner. This looks a little bit more plausible now that we are seeing the Model 3 Highland available, and with the delivery estimates originally when this came out last night of January to February. So as you can see here, they've already been pushed out to February to March in just, the 12 hours or so, I guess closer to 24 hours now, that the vehicle has been available. Now, of course, that doesn't mean a whole lot until we know what production rates are, but given how quick the transition was and how quick they were able to ramp back to full production capacity in Giga Shanghai, hopefully that means we're seeing something similar out of Fremont as well. In terms of other things, just to kind of note, we do see the range numbers a little bit different. So you can see the standard range or the rear wheel drive version still at 272 miles. They do say EPA estimated. For the long range, this bumps up to 341. I believe that's up from 333 or thereabouts previously. So a little bit over a 2% increase in range for the long range version. Of course, we do still expect these to be the same batteries, especially because the IRA credit situation did not change. So with those being the same batteries, we also have to consider that for the EPA range tests, of course, for the Model Y, these had just changed. So we can quickly take a look at that. Because of the new EPA test clarification that the EPA had provided, remember for the Model Y long range, that decreased by 20 miles, pretty similar for the Model Y Performance. So about 6% decreases there. We didn't see an adjustment on the Model 3. I don't know if Tesla was required to make one or if it was only for 2024 model years. I'm not sure exactly how many 2024 Model 3s there would be before this Highland update. With that being said, you would expect that the similar results that would push the Model Y EPA range down would also apply to this vehicle, in which case we're seeing potentially the stacking of that decline plus this 2% increase, which maybe effectively leads to about an 8% increase, which would be a little bit more on par of what we had seen from other countries with the Giga Shanghai Model Highland, or Model 3 Highland. So probably a little bit better than what we may have expected, or maybe a little bit better than what it would necessarily show on the surface with a 2% increase in range there. For the standard range, again, that's the same, but that was always the same in terms of, if I can get the right page here, the Model Y rear wheel drive also did not change either. So maybe to be expected on the standard range there. Just looking at my notes here, so the performance model removed, we talked about that. There does not appear to be a front camera. I don't know if I can zoom in at all on this, but remember at some points in time we had seen a front camera on some of the renders for this Model 3 when it first came out in other countries. We're not seeing that yet, so of course it is on the Cybertruck at this point. We'll see if that is further delayed on some of these other vehicles. There have been rumored that that is coming at some point, but nothing yet, at least from the render. And then colors. So the old red and the old midnight silver metallic are now, I think, gone across Tesla's lineup, with the stealth gray being brought over to the Model 3 Highland now, replacing midnight silver metallic, and ultra red replacing the old multi-coat red as well. So those colors are changed over. And then the delivery window, again, hopefully a sign that the order rate so far has been strong, again, despite the change with the tax credits heading into this year. So exciting to see this so early. If Tesla can transition this pretty quickly throughout this quarter, hopefully we don't see too much of a margin impact in Q1. If more of this transition did end up happening in Q4, maybe that's something to be aware of for the Q4 financials. And of course, if there was downtime on that impacted Model 3 production and sales, we already have the delivery figures, but something to keep an eye on as well, because there can be transition costs as that occurs. That being said, I don't expect it to be too bad, just given how quickly Giga Shanghai was able to transition. We're probably not looking at quite the same for Fremont, but hopefully with this happening so early in the quarter, means pretty good signs in that front. All right, so I think that is pretty much it for the Model 3 Highland, but I'm excited about this. I replied to Tesla's comment yesterday that I'm got to consider upgrading here. I've had my Model 3 now for 3 years. Want to keep it a little bit longer, but it is definitely tempting to upgrade. So let me know if you're making that same consideration in the comments today. All right, like I said, not a whole lot of other news today, interestingly, but we did have a little bit of an update potentially out of India. So apparently, according to a government official in Gujarat, looks like the potential announcement that had been hypothesized or speculated about of a Tesla Gigafactory in India that maybe could happen at this Gujarat summit. It looks like this is no longer expected, at least from these comments. So we'll see. This summit is running the 10th through the 12th. So over the next couple of days, we should know for sure. I don't think the expectations from those initial reports were probably super high from anyone, but this seems to be the latest update on that. And then just kind of an elaboration on something that we talked about a day or two ago with the US auto inventory situation. So Automotive News published an article about this. It's largely what we had talked about, but they made an interesting point that we didn't specifically mention, which was that for inventory in the auto market, like we talked about, year end, that was at 2.7 million vehicles, 71 days of supply. But they also point out that the prior month, so end of November, there was 2.5 million vehicles in inventory at that point. So almost a 10% increase. I don't know what that exactly is, maybe 8% increase in one single month in the available inventory in the United States, or I think this is US, yeah. So just kind of shows that even with this inventory supply being where it was, which we talked about being the most significant in the last 3 years, the rate of change on that inventory in the end of the year, which usually is a strong selling period, was quite significant as well. So worth keeping an eye on, and I just wanted to highlight again that rate of change part of it as well. And then another story that we had previously talked about was this Cummins settlement that was supposed to be for about $1.7 billion. I saw a headline today that this was $2 billion now, so it looked like that had increased a little bit. It looks like it's the same fine that's being paid, and then they are also paying or spending $325 million to quote-unquote remedy the excess emissions, according to the Reuters report, which will be $175 million to California specifically to help reduce nitrogen oxide. And it will also, the balance of the funds apparently will be used to fund replacement high-emitting diesel locomotive engines. I'm not sure if that's in the 175 or the 325, but all in total, this brings the settlement up to about $2 billion in terms of that Cummins emissions thing related to Ram trucks like we had previously talked about. Another story we briefly mentioned, this one is on SpaceX. SpaceX had launched a few days ago, 6 days ago, I guess 8 days ago now, but 6 days ago after launching their first direct-to-cell capable Starlink satellites, SpaceX has completed their first test. So they've sent and received text messages from an unmodified cell phone to those Starlink satellites that have this direct-to-cell capability on the T-Mobile network. So exciting to see that. It's a milestone for SpaceX, and I think over time this technology is going to be very helpful. I would expect that at some point this probably saves a life, just having greater connectivity in those situations where otherwise you maybe wouldn't. I think it's going to be super helpful for people to have. So congrats to SpaceX on that successful test. And then the last couple of things, just a reminder that we do have the CPI report tomorrow morning. We'll keep an eye on that and how it relates to interest rate expectations. For January, the FOMC meeting is going to be on January 30th, I believe. Maybe the results on the 31st, but we can see that expectations are pretty much fully in line with a continued pause at this point. There had been some expectation previously that maybe we'd see a rate cut. Those expectations for a cut have been cut in about half. So we'll see how the CPI report affects those expectations, if at all. But that'll wrap it up for today. So as always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can also find me on X at Tesla Podcast. And we'll see you tomorrow for the Thursday, January 11th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.